One of the things that frustrates me the most about being stuck in FA is the kind of advice that we get. And I don't mean the typical take a shower and just lift bro kind of advice. I mean when people get a little bit more into it and say things like, you know, go to the gym and have an interesting life and just get a good job and be masculine and be well-traveled, and they list a bunch of traits that we're all supposed to have. Now, before I get into it, I want to frame this first by showing you some videos. The first one from Virgin Messiah. Let's take a look at what he has to say.
Several people suggest, like, hey, you should stay for this and that. So I was like, all right, well, invited from several people, so I will now not feel weird about just coming to somebody's thing that I'm not quite a part of. And I'm trying to find a way to phrase this. So it's mostly a lot of women who bring their boyfriends, husbands, whatever. People generally-ish around your age, maybe a little younger, maybe a little older, things like that. And I'm trying to find a way to phrase this that doesn't come across as being judgmental. The bar, man, the bar is sort of low sometimes, isn't it? It's very, basically, I'll put it this way. I'll be blunt about it. Oh, this one lady said her husband was like a former Marine or blah, blah. So, what are you expecting to see? Some Chad with the military haircut and whatever. And it's like, there's just this really skinny dude who's like crossed his legs just when he sits down, like, Trudeau from Canada, just weirdly effeminate. And that was the thing. It's just like a lot of goofy, just kind of bug people and effeminate dudes, and just like, wow. Whereas like the barrier to entry is actually so low. And I realize you're kind of doing a bit of a cognitive dissonance where it's like, well, shit, if these goofy people, goofy dudes, quote unquote, are with women, then why are you single? Blah, blah. Like, none of this matters. Like I said, I don't want this to sound, which I realize that's not what it sounds like, but I don't want this to sound like I'm trying to put down of like, oh, well, I'm totally better than no, like, I don't feel that I'm totally better than anybody. So you spend a bunch of time on the internet, memeing and this and that and chat and jawlines and Tinder experiments and blah, 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 where you can become very disconnected from a lot of what you see in the real world. Now, that's not to say that you couldn't end up like becoming a gym cell or something like that. You know what I mean? So don't get me wrong. But it's just like I said, you look at like a room full of women and their boyfriends and husbands, and it's like, where the fuck is Chad? They're like Chupacabra here. A whole bunch of people claim to see him, and it's like abominable snowman here. Now, obviously, somebody's always going to be better than you, but it's like, God, holy shit, man, the bar is fucking low. Wow.
So Virgin Messiah went out into real life and noticed something that I'm sure a lot of us have noticed and sometimes gets talked about on the FA forums, is that if we are to take normal people's advice seriously for what would be required for us to have a normal dating life, most men wouldn't meet that criteria. I mean, let's be real about this. Most men are cowards. Most men are not very masculine. Most men are kind of dumb. Most men dress like slobs. Most men are ugly. And yet, we're consistently told we have to be better than them, not just to have a normal dating life, but to have a subpar dating life. We have to be better than average, and then we have to accept whatever comes along. You can look out in the world and see that most men don't meet the kind of criteria that we're told needs to be met to have a dating life. And it's not just me who's noticed this. It's not just FAs on the forum or Virgin Messiah who's noticed this. Women have noticed this too. Let me show you another clip here.
This video is going to be one for the ladies, where we ask each other, is your boyfriend effeminate? Lately, in this magical place so many of us call home, that is the internet, there have been quite a few memes tackling the fact that, frankly, men are a little more, well, effeminate than they used to be. However, it is something that I think most women out there want in our partners, in our boyfriends and our husbands. So considering how, again, masculinity is in such short supply nowadays, I thought this video might be helpful for some of us. And so the way I see it, effeminacy in men isn't really the presence of femininity, it's more like the absence of masculinity. if that makes sense. And actually, St. Thomas Aquinas, who's a pretty cool guy, big fan, like him a lot, he defined effeminacy specifically as an unwillingness to put aside pleasure in order to pursue what is difficult. That, I think, is a pretty spot-on definition, and it's something that we could potentially see manifest in the lives of our partners in several different ways. Probably the most common way that men today put pleasure over the pursuit of meaningful though difficult goals is in sensory and sensual overindulgence. One of the biggest time sucks in this area is, of course, video games. In an age where addictions to masturbation and pornography are on the rise, and where abstinence is increasingly uncommon, exercising self-control in order to delay sexual gratification is just not in vogue. Another area where effeminacy is becoming pretty common among menfolk is when pleasure takes precedence over concern for health. If your boyfriend doesn't want to do any working out or physical activity because it's more fun to hang out or lay around, or if he has a bad diet preferring junk food over anything healthy, or if he's a huge consumer of alcohol, that's something to be concerned about. Healthy habits are important for everyone, regardless of gender, yes, of course, but these habits really play into that effeminacy in men, especially considering how a lot of these unhealthy lifestyle choices have a negative effect on testosterone levels. This brings us to emotional effeminacy. I would never say, and I don't believe, that men should have no emotions or that they should be afraid of their emotions. But at the same time, being overly emotional isn't in line with masculinity. And this is another area where I think there may be some misconceptions, because a lot of people might look at behaviors like being overly aggressive and controlling, or heck, even selfish, and think, yep, there's some masculinity right there, that's a man's man. But think about it, those behaviors don't make a good husband, and they certainly don't make a good father. And there's one more thing I'd like to mention, something which incidentally I myself am very guilty of, and that's complaining. We all at some time or another just need to complain, right? To vent. It's cathartic, but it's another way of doing what is pleasurable instead of what is hard yet worthy. Complaining is easy, but actually trying to find solutions to problems, that's challenging, and that's the opposite of effeminacy. A man who has embraced his masculinity puts aside pleasure to pursue greatness, and not just at work, but in all aspects of his life.
Puts aside pleasure to pursue greatness. So in other words, most men fail that criteria for being masculine, because most men aren't great. Of course they're not. I mean, by definition, they're not going to be great. Only a very small fraction of men are great men. But you also look at the context that Roaming Millennial is talking about there. She's not talking about incels being too effeminate. She's talking about boyfriends. So she's talking about men that women have already selected as boyfriends. And the way she's talking about it parallels what Virgin Messiah was talking about at that night out he was at, where the women brought their boyfriends and husbands along. So even though we're told we need to hit the gym and have interesting lives and be well-traveled and speak 3 languages and pursue greatness, even though most men fall very, very short of that criteria, and yet the average man has an average dating life, well, what's going on here? I think I know. Let me start with this. It actually takes me back to the most popular video on my channel, or at least as of right now, the most popular video on my channel, the one about short men, the old ABC special that I did a reaction video to, is that a lot of women can't judge a man's height very well. I'm going somewhere with this, stay with me. And I'm not the only one who's noticed this. This is from the subreddit called /tall. Short people can't judge height. Every time one of my friends tells a story about a tall person, they always say that the guy was taller than me. Not that I think it's impossible, just unlikely. This happens quite often. The thing that gets me, though, is those same friends regularly round my height up to like 7 feet tall. Does this happen to you guys too? According to his thing, he's 6'7". This guy, so often from short girls I get the whole, what are you, 6'4", 6'5", when he's actually 6'0". This guy who's 7'2", stranger, my brother is taller than you. Really, how tall is he? Stranger, 6'5". Yeah, people make up weird numbers for me. It's fair enough. I'm also terrible at estimating other people's height if they do not come close to mine. I don't usually mind it. Sometimes, though, when I'm really lucky, I get to hear this version of the conversation. Stranger, wow, you must be at least 6'4", right? Actually, I'm 6'1". You can't be 6'1", because you're at least 4 inches taller than me, and I'm 6 foot. Keep telling yourself that, buddy. This is a crucial part right here. The self-delusion on the part of a lot of people. It's not just that people can't judge height. It's that they're either lying to themselves about their height or they're deluded about their own height. You know, if you either look at dating sites or just even listen to women talk, a lot of times they'll say they want a man who's at least 6 foot tall. I don't have the statistics right in front of me, but I think that's somewhere around 12% of all men are 6 foot tall or higher. Now, women might say they prefer that, but I guarantee you a lot of them think that they're getting that. Now I'm 5'11", so I don't really have a reason. When I'm barefoot, I'm 5'11", so I don't really have a reason to lie about my height because I'm 1 inch shorter than what women supposedly prefer. Now, put shoes on me, and I might boost me up an inch or so. And if you watch that old ABC video, the woman who was running the dating service said that most men lie about their height. I'm not sure if they're actually lying about it or they just don't know it. Their estimates are way off. And take a look at this body fat percentage chart for men. I think something similar is going on here when people tell you, just hit the lift and gym, bro. Just hit the lift and gym, bro. Look at these guys. Who has the athletic body here? Really, it's going to be the guys in I think the 7 to 9% guy probably looks kind of skinny, but 7%, 10% guy, with a shirt on, probably even the 14, the 17% sort of kind of. But just like people can't judge height, I'm pretty sure that they can't judge body weight or body composition very well either. The guys who are here in the 25 to 29 range, or maybe even this 21 to 24, a lot of people might say, oh, he has an athletic body. No. You're going to have to drop about 10 percentage points to get that athletic look. So I suspect part of what's going on here is that people will give advice for things like, hit the gym, have an interesting life, speak 3 languages, be masculine and all that, because they are deluded about their own characteristics. And the science backs me up on this. Scientific American, you are less beautiful than you think. The evidence from psychological research suggests instead that we tend to think of our appearance in ways that are more flattering than are warranted. Most of us think that we are better than we actually are, not just physically, but in every way. In one research study that was done, the researchers took pictures of study participants and, using a computerized procedure, produced more attractive and less attractive versions of those pictures. Participants were told that they would be presented with a series of images including their original picture and images modified from that picture. They were then asked to identify the unmodified picture. They tended to select an attractively enhanced one. Inflated perception of one's physical appearance is a manifestation of a general phenomenon psychologists call self-enhancement. Researchers have shown that people overestimate the likelihood that they would engage in desirable behavior. Most people believe that they are above average, a statistical impossibility. For example, 93% of drivers rate themselves as better than the median driver. Of college professors, 94% say that they do above average work. People are unrealistically optimistic about their own health risks compared to those of other people. Yeah, this is a common finding among social scientists. So just like height, looks, and a lot of other personal traits, I suspect part of the problem that we're running into when we're getting bad dating advice, for be masculine, speak 3 languages, have an interesting life, have a purpose and goal, is that a lot of regular people are deluded about who they are. They think that they're better than they are, as Scientific American has shown us. As far as FAs go, I suspect that since a lot of us suffer from things like clinical depression, we probably underestimate our own value and our own worth and our own skills and abilities. Just like people can't judge height, just like people can't judge their own attractiveness, just like people can't judge bodies very well for whether it's athletic or fat or whatever, people are not judging their own characteristics accurately. They think they have interesting lives. They think that they're masculine. They think that whatever, but they're not. And we can see part of that from Roaming Millennials video about how existing boyfriends are too effeminate. You can see that just from leaving the house and paying attention to a lot of the men. You look around and you say, well, why am I being held to standards that are higher than that of the average man? That doesn't make sense. Well, the reason why we're being told that these are the standards is because most men are delusional and think that they meet those standards. Like Virgin Messiah put it, Chad is over there hanging out with the abominable snowman and the tooth fairy. And I don't think this is an internet phenomenon either, because this is something that I saw before the internet existed as well. A lot of men overestimating who they are. Now, one thing I have noticed is that as people grow older, some of them will become more honest and say, yeah, most people really have boring lives. And I think that by us getting this constant message of, we have to do all of this self-improvement and that we should be shooting for goals that most men don't even qualify for, I think is demoralizing to us. Because you would think that the standards are actually higher than they really are. As Virgin Messiah pointed out, the bar is actually lower than we think it is. And we can see that from Roaming Millennials clip talking about effeminate boyfriends. The bar is lower than what people actually say that it is. Most men might think that they're masculine, but they're not. They might think that they're interesting, but they're not. Because really most people aren't. Most of us are just cogs in the machine of history like everyone else. You know, most people are just average. That's what being average is. There was a previous conversation I had with Counselor Guy, I believe it was the Counselor Guy conversation, where he argued that he thinks actually FAs and incels probably have a more accurate view of themselves because of the phenomena of depressive realism. Here it is from an article in Psychology Today. Most non-depressed people have an unduly rose-tinted perspective on their attributes, circumstances, and possibilities. For instance, most people think that they are better than average driver, citizen, or parent, collectively implying that the average driver, citizen, or parent is in fact not at all average, which is obviously a statistical impossibility. A couple on the verge of getting married is likely to overestimate the odds of having a sunny honeymoon or a gifted child, but underestimate the odds of having a miscarriage, falling ill, or getting divorced. Such positive illusions, as they are called, are quite the norm and the poisoned well of much of our self-esteem. Yeah, most people are delusional. They're not just mistaken. They're literally seeing things that aren't there. In contrast, the scientific literature suggests that those with only mild to moderate depression can also have a more accurate judgment about the outcome of so-called contingent events which may or may not occur, and a more realistic perception of their role, abilities, and limitations. This so-called depressive realism may enable a person with depression to shed the Pollyanna optimism and rose-tinted spectacles that shield us from reality, to see life more accurately and to judge it accordingly. So why am I making this video? I'm making it to tell all the FAs, when we get the kind of dating advice of be interesting, speak 3 different languages, hit the gym, have some overall life purpose, and strive towards greatness, that what we are getting is the incredibly biased advice of people who see the world and themselves with rose-tinted glasses. So really, we should take it all with a grain of salt. So thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.